Hello, and welcome to Confidently Wrong, a show by regular dudes talking with confidence about content we have no right to speak about with any kind of authority, but do it anyway. I'm Wesley Nakamura, and as always, I'm joined by Mike Smith and Savon Jones, aka Captain Bonnie. No Brian this week. This is episode 53, and we try to find the bullseye of the Hawkeye finale, peel back the opening chapters of the Book of Boba Fett, and talk about what we're loving. I'm confident that it's going to be the best show you've ever listened to, and well, hey, if it's not, you can always ask us for a refund.
Incredible!
Welcome back. We're excited to talk about some stuff. There was all kinds of stuff that came out over the holiday break. We wrapped up Hawkeye, Book of Boba Fett launched. We've got a couple more things coming. Peacekeeper is coming in a couple of weeks. I mean, we're just getting like all the things right now, all the content. And even Eternals, me and Mike haven't seen it. That's going to come out on Disney Plus. So, I mean, this is all. Oh, Savon, you haven't seen it yet either. So
nope, I'm waiting though.
So I mean, January is
again. Shout out Brian being the only one doing the homework.
Man, that was
he
a
really
weird
did.
thing.
And he last show he did his homework from Guam. Like, guys, I mean,
So at a certain point, you have to shed the label because if he's doing his homework consistently and we keep pointing it out, then now he does his homework.
It's the redemption story we didn't know we needed.
Who's the new Brian?
Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about Hawkeye.
Well, you overslept today, so probably you.
Yeah, and he won't get HBO Max, so he'll never see
I have
anything
HBO
on there.
Max now.
What? Christmas comes early. So we wanted to talk about Hawkeye just a little bit. I think it was a smaller show of much lower stakes. And so we don't want to dedicate, an entire pod to it, but it did happen. We did watch it. For those of you out there who are like, what, did they ever finish it? Like, yeah, we totally did. Was it a satisfying finale? For those of you who haven't watched it, I'm going to do some spoilers. Basically, Hawkeye and Kate Bishop, they have to team up. They kind of start working together to solve the mystery of what's going on here within their little circle of friends. The mom is somewhat responsible. Kingpin is somewhat responsible for how things are going, kind of the villain roles here. And then in the finale, Kate Bishop has to fight Kingpin and Yelena. Hawkeye has to fight Yelena. Echo has to fight Kingpin and has to fight her boyfriend. And so there's just sort of these different duo dynamics going on throughout the ending, and by the end, Hawkeye and Kate Bishop are partners in really passing the mantle on to Kate so that she can become kind of the next long range grounded character in the MCU. So I think it's fair to just kind of jump to the end here, which was was the finale satisfying to you? Did you feel some type of way about Kingpin being different in terms of his power level compared to his Kingpin in Daredevil? How did that stand for you, Mike?
Specifically with Kingpin?
Yeah.
I was so disappointed. I mean, I'm not going to lie. And I wrote it here, I understand. They weren't just going to be able to copy the Netflix characters and paste them into the Disney MCU. It was just way too dark. And in fact, it's clear, I saw his costume came exactly from the comics. I was really upset, because they made a whole point in the Netflix show about these clean white suits with the cufflinks to go to Tommy Bahama was a little jarring. But again, I understand. It's from the comics. They're going a different route. He's not a normal dude in the comics. He is super strong, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong.
He is deceptive. He's supposed to look like a big boy who can't fight, but actually it's nah. He puts hands on people pretty consistently.
So I was sad. I'm not gonna lie. I was very disappointed. I think the Netflix shows are all about, especially Daredevil and especially the last season, or just the actual character of Kingpin. It's all about the slow burn and building up the character, and then he has these moments of outburst, and then when it really climaxes, then it's just wow, this is a real force of nature almost. But you're not going to have a character in MCU kill people by slamming their head in a car door 20 times, And I think the finale as a whole, I coined something as we were sitting here kind of planning this out, and I'm going to call it the Allen Index. And this is whether or not Alan would like kind of something or not. I think I have a pretty good gauge of what Alan likes and doesn't like, especially with the MCU. He has very polarized opinions about different things. And I was like, you should watch Hawkeye. Like, it's super low stakes. It's all about the character. Like, and the character who, like, and he doesn't like Jeremy Renner, which is fair. But it was just a cool story about, like, who this person is, like, what it means to be a normal human being in the MCU. Like, he's battered up, he's deaf, he's got all this trauma. It leverages his relationship with Nat very well, even though, obviously, Alan coined the anodyne descriptor of Black Widow. My tagline is I was pleasantly surprised about Hawkeye up until the end, and then surprisingly disappointed with how they wrapped it up. I just think it's the downside of the Disney Plus shows is that they have to climax in the last episode almost always, not like a traditional show where it builds and builds and maybe wraps up in a satisfying way at the end. And I just think in this case the climax just fell short. That last battle in the ice rink was so stupid, where like there's 1,000 guys surrounding them with guns and they're still gonna rush them one by one to box with them, and I was just like, and then the Kingpin stuff, and it just lost everything I think that made the show great up until the end. But you know, this was also kind of a COVID Disney Plus production, so I think we kind of need to cut it some slack.
Fair enough, Savon.
Oh man, I didn't quite feel the same. I just enjoyed watching it. I talked before about how I enjoyed having a low stakes story that's not about the end of the world. I think what I enjoyed most with it, though, was just, I think they did a good job of straddling that line between Hawkeye being a badass secret agent who does spy infiltration stuff, and they showed that. But then also still, which I liked about the finality, hey, it's a homie with a bow. So when you get right down to like a realistic fight, it's not going to ever look realistic. And I'm glad they didn't try to make it more realistic than what it was going to be. Like, hey, give these dudes some trick cartoon video game arrows and let them go to work. Because if you're someone who enjoys the Hawkeye character, like it's like the character K said, trick arrows? I'm like, yeah, trick arrows. So was it silly that it was a bunch of nameless goons in New York with pipes? I don't know, maybe they got strict gun control and limited amounts of guns and there's no police. Like, I don't know about New York police response times and all that stuff. So some of that, you got to suspend your disbelief. But I had fun watching it because Hawkeye is still at his core a bit of a campy character who uses a bow. And I think if you're going to make all that work, you can't pretend it's something it's not. So having just these fireworks arrows and an arrow that had the dude's car shrink and get picked up by the bird and all that stuff, I loved that. I was cackling like a child because it was just so fun and over the top to watch. I agree to an extent about the Kingpin bit. Like, this happens all the time when you're moving a character from just different maturity ratings. And, you know, it happened with Clone Wars, too. Certain characters are going to get brutalized more in, like, an animated series than a live action that's just going for different audiences. That's just the nature of having a big, expanded universe and world. Tone's going to shift. Characters are going to be sillier in some productions and more serious in others. I kind of just recognize that for what it is. Would it have been nice to see Kingpin beat a man to death with his bare hands? Sure, but if you were expecting that, you were setting yourself up for disappointment.
I wish he just didn't fight, though, you know? Like, he doesn't really fight in Daredevil that much. Like, he does what he needs to, but it's essentially the climax of 3 seasons of the show is him really kind of getting into it.
Yeah, but straight up, in the comics, Kingpin pretty often throws hands. He throws hands with Spider-Man. He throws hands with
that's
Daredevil.
why I can't even be that mad. You know, like some of my favorite Marvel stuff, like the Spider-Man PS4 game, the Into the Spider-Verse, like he's fighting. Like he's a big dude. He's comical. But like, it's just rough to have the same character with the same actor so drastically, too. He gets introduced and then immediately is in kind of the Tommy Bahama outfit, fighting hand-to-hand. Taking super damage.
I think it's one of those you gotta don't be too narrow in your expectations for the character because there's always room for them to change them and evolve them and adapt them.
So, I have a small question. Do you think he's dead?
No.
In the comics he lives. They do that's a shot for shot.
If they introduced him and killed him off in 2 episodes, it would be shocking.
Yeah. That's why I was kind of like, I don't think he's dead. So then I was like, why do it that way? Like,
I know
So-
all of this kind of reeks of COVID to me, to be
Really?
honest. It just seems like they had plans for this and they had to kind of adjust to do things in singular settings, and kind of lower the scale of stuff. Like the ice rink fight screamed COVID to me because you can do that with like one green screen essentially.
I don't think he's dead, but again, this is like a shot for shot. In the comics, the character Echo confronts Kingpin about killing of her father, and then he tries to win her over, and then same thing, alleyway, off camera, shoot, thud. In the comics, Kingpin lives, but he's blinded as a result. I'm not sure how getting shot blinded you unless you got shot in the eye, but maybe they'll do their own thing. And he lives and then actually has Daredevil become his lawyer. So I don't know what direction they'll go with that exactly, but I would imagine he's been grievously wounded, and then they go from there. Because Echo's still getting her own show, so it would make
She
sense.
is?
Yeah.
Why does every character need their, like, it's crazy to me.
I mean, you
Every
didn't remember that? We talked about the thing. They said Echo was the name of one of the shows.
Oh, no.
yeah,
But-
that was from
Every
Disney-
character gets
Disney
their
Plus
own
Day or
show.
whatever.
It's crazy.
But, but also, they did a cool job of, like, portraying her deaf experience, so I'm curious to see
Sure.
if she's a lead, like, what can, maybe that's a chance for them to tell a story, a type of story we haven't gotten to see before, which we're always asking about that. Maybe this is what it looks like. Because, if you had Echo other watches on their own, people ain't going to watch that. You gotta Trojan horse these characters in a little bit of, like, hey, people wouldn't be engaged otherwise. It's the orange is the new black trick, right? No one wanted to watch what the show actually was, so you had to sell it as something else to introduce people to the idea to open them up.
All right. Where does this rate for you guys compared to other of the Disney Plus Marvel shows? So I'm to me, it was better than Winter Soldier or Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Sorry, I got to get it right. And I thought it was probably better than What If only because it was more in one, series rather than sort of.
I don't feel
these
like you can
disconnected
compare What If
shows.
to these.
Yeah, I guess that's true. But to me, it was probably below Loki, probably below WandaVision. Is that kind of where you guys are feeling where it sits?
Yeah, I wrote below Wanda and Loki and above Falcon.
Okay.
I'd probably put it above Loki, but not because Loki is worse. That's just purely like a personal preference taste thing.
Oh,
But I
we're
think
aware.
But I think it's in that tier of, if it appeals to, at that point you're splitting hairs on who the audience is appealing to is.
All right.
It was
Fair
good.
enough. So that was our little 7 minutes on Hawkeye. If you guys haven't checked it out, apparently it's like a lukewarm recommend. We were into it, but it sort of it had some weaknesses.
It's fun.
Yeah, it's fun.
You're not gonna watch it and say, "Oh my god, this is boring." Like, the acting, it has some of the best acting I would say across all the shows.
That's true.
Like, I actually would say it has the best across the board acting.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know about acting, but they're
the
likable.
characters are.
Yelena's
And
likable.
yeah.
Kate's likable. They do some good stuff.
The dude with
Yelena-
the sword. Come on, he was so fun.
What do with the sword?
The Jack, the
Jack.
stepdad.
The stepdad.
Oh,
I didn't like him that
Lalo
I don't
from
know.
he's he's in Better Call Saul, and he's such a formidable character. It's so funny to see him turn into like a Marvel goofball.
The
But yeah,
LARPers.
honorable mention to Florence Pugh as Yelena. She was the best part of Black Widow, and she's probably the best part of the show. I mean, that character has grown on me a lot.
She's really fun.
The macaroni scene is so good.
So good.
I like
All
the
right.
mama.
Let's get into Book of Boba Fett. So the opinions on Book of Boba Fett seem to be all over the place in the social media universe. Even within our kind of group, our reactions have sort of been just like kind of all over the place. So first, for those, there's a lot of people. I did kind of a social media poll a couple weeks ago and asked people if they had seen it, and a lot of people said they hadn't. So for those who haven't gotten into it, what's kind of the premise of the show? Savon, how would you sort of set this up?
Yeah, so Book of Boba Fett. Some of you may be familiar with the character if you watched The Mandalorian. Some of you might just be general Star Wars fans because he's been a part of the Star Wars lore since Episode 5. So he's been around for quite some time. So Boba Fett is a bounty hunter. If you watch some of the older prequel trilogy, he's the clone of a bounty hunter. Raised to be the bounty hunter's son. The bounty hunter dies, and then you see his arc throughout the Clone Wars show and The Mandalorian of wandering as a child, becoming a bounty hunter, becoming a famous, legendary one, and then you see his character get unceremoniously killed in Star Wars Episode 6 in the sand battle. So Book of Boba Fett is basically filling in the gaps of a lot of what happened to his character after he was thrown into the pit at the end of Return of the Jedi. If you've watched The Mandalorian, we already saw his character reappear. What was that? Was that season 1?
Season 2.
Season 2.
He had no armor.
No, you're right, no armor. But you see him in the desert wandering, and you wonder, oh, we thought this character was dead. What's going on? He teams up with the Mando, helps him with his goals. They have some aligned interests. He goes about his business. Boba Fett is telling us what happens after that journey, but then also how he got out of that pit in the first place. So it's kind of a two almost parallel road story, telling two stories at the same time. But now we get to see what's he trying to do, what's his motivations taking over his former employer, and what does that mean for how he's become the person he is. Because he's had a long amount of arc going on in the Star Wars lore, even with the Disney acquisition.
All right, so Savon, you've been kind of texting us that you've been enjoying it. What have you liked about it so far?
Yeah, so I think what I'm liking so far, one is just like the art and set piece design. Star Wars always has these really ridiculous alien designs that were animatronic puppets back in the day. And now that they have this big, nearly infinite Disney budget, they've stayed committed to these animatronic puppet designs, even if they're touched up and mostly done in CGI. And it's a really good blend that makes puppets that already were great for their time look like real living, breathing things. Like when you see the mayor, and we've seen that type of alien before, but you can see the mix of practical and CGI and then the translators. It's a lot of attention to detail that just makes the world feel alive. You know, you see these alien Trandoshans, and they do little things like puppets. You couldn't have the sideways blinking slits, but now with better production budgets, you can. And you haven't changed the core design, but it brings it all to life. And that attention to detail makes me feel invested in this world. So just like the production value, great. I'm just loving it. And also, Mandalorian, Brian talked a lot about how it's essentially a Western. They're still going that direction with this show, too, with a lot of Western influences. I wasn't quite sure how they do it, but I like where they're heading with it. And I wasn't quite expecting that. And that's a pleasant surprise.
So, Mike, you've had a different sort of take on it. I think we were talking about it the other day in the group chat. Also, to be clear, this is we're recording this after the second episode has dropped, so we haven't seen episode 3 yet. So that obviously may change how this. This is definitely going to come out after episode 3.
This will come out by the time like 4 is out.
Yeah, but we haven't seen episode 3 or 4 yet. So, anyways, so we're going off of what 2 episodes we've seen. So, Mike, why are you chatting with the group and sending MID in all caps at us? What's going on here? You're a Star Wars man. What are you?
I am a Star Wars man, and in fact, it's dawned on me the irony that the only Star Wars Funko I have is from the sequels, but I love Kylo that much. It's funny because I actually agree with everything Savon just said, but Savon, you didn't really touch on the plot at all. You talked about the production, you talked about the world building, you talked about the visuals, the set pieces, but not the actual story. So I completely agree with everything you said, and I think a little context is we got Mando, right? That was Jon Favreau, who kind of built out the Mandalorian, and like essentially, like it seems like Disney and Kathleen Kennedy were like, yo, the sequels didn't do too good, like help us, buddy, like we need you to take some of that Marvel Kevin Feige magic. And it largely succeeded with Mando, and now that's going to build out into different shows, and obviously him and Filoni have a few shows that are going to connect and seem like they're going to kind of intersect at the end in almost an Infinity War type of thing. All of that to say, I think he brings that same magic. I think it's the Western magic from Mandalorian. I think there's that attention to detail. It's very much going back to kind of the tone, the feeling, the vibe of the original trilogy, and it does that effectively. So I'm not going to rehash everything Savon just said. What I'm going to say is the actual plot of all of this is all flashbacks, and I'm really struggling to feel like, why should I care about this? I've always been fascinated by the Tusken Raiders. You know, I think the deepest we got into their culture was after Anakin massacred a village, and we're like, oh, there's women and children. Like everybody always kind of just assumed it was men. So that's cool, but again, like, what does that have to do with Boba Fett? Like, there's such a deep character there that there's so much mystery, and it seems like we're unraveling that mystery, and what we're finding is just kind of mid. It's just not that interesting, and it's what I think is going to happen, and I'm kind of talking out my ass here, is this is another Favreau show, so it's going to connect into the arc they're laying with God, I'm forgetting his name now. The Moff, the blue guy. God, all right, anyway.
Tarkin? No, not Tarkin.
No, not Tarkin. What's the other guy's name? He
Thrawn.
Yeah, Thrawn. All this is going to lead up to Thrawn. We had Ahsoka, Mando, Baby Yoda, all that stuff. All of this is done by Favreau, and then the last episode of the show is going to be directed by Dave Filoni, who's obviously kind of the story guy behind this, era of Star Wars, Clone Wars, and then clearly these shows. So I feel like they're just kind of using this show as like a mini series. We'll get the first 2 episodes. You got to look at the Tusken, see some with Boba, and then I think the very end of it is going to connect in a big way to what he's trying to do later on. Which maybe when we look back and we can play this clip, if I'm right, it'll seem more interesting. But it's just up until now, I'm just kind of watching this like, I don't really like, it's like, this is more a show about Tusken Raiders than it is about Boba Fett. Like, you could replace it with a different character and it wouldn't really mean anything, because it's an origin story for later on Boba, but they haven't actually built up later on Boba. So it's just kind of like, what are we doing here? Why did you pick this, and why are we telling this story?
Fair. So I guess I'm going to skip forward a little bit. This series is answering some questions about Boba Fett that was sort of generated by the Mandalorian. Like, how did he survive the Sarlacc pit? Where is he getting his like hand-to-hand combat skills that weren't really on display in the first, in the original trilogy? But it's not really answering questions sort of in the middle period, right? Where like, how does he become this great bounty hunter? Why is everyone so into him after seeing him come up, show up on screen in episode 5? I know he does get a little bit fleshed out in Clone Wars, but he's certainly not, I wouldn't say they do like deep dives into him. Is this series striking a satisfying balance of past and present, of questions you want answered? Mike, where are you on this one?
I don't think so, because like the whole point of the story is an origin story for how he becomes like the crime lord, but we have no knowledge of him ever being a crime lord, so it's an origin story for the next stage of Boba Fett, when because he was just a side character that got really popular because of toys, that's all he was. Like, he wasn't a big character in the movies. In the Clone Wars, he's a child, so it's not really Boba Fett as we know it now. So it's just kind of an origin story for a character we don't really know, that isn't really connected to a previous character that was fleshed out in any way. So it's just kind of exists in its own space, and that space is built on really rocky ground to me.
All right, Savon?
Yeah, so I guess none of what Mike said is wrong. In fact, it's all very on the money. But I guess maybe it's like expectations piece of, I'm not going in with any major questions that I want to have answered. I'm kind of just along for the ride, which is why Mike earlier highlighted just the visual storytelling and all of the set pieces, because my criticism before was kind of similar to what Mike is already saying of, who cares? Why should I be invested in this? And I was always in the camp of, I don't like when anti-hero characters become popular, because as you flesh them out, you have to make them more heroic, and now they turn into a rude good guy rather than a genuine character who does, morally ambiguous things. Like, I want to see Boba execute somebody, rather than just not. I want to do something actually a little devious. That's actually something a crime lord would do. So on one hand, I'm not going in with a lot of questions. So it's letting me just appreciate the ride for what it is. So was I interested in a bunch of Tusken flashbacks or flashbacks? Not really, but I've been engaged by them, so I'm not complaining either. Do I really care about him becoming a crime lord? Not in the slightest. But that entire scene with the Hutt twins and then that big Wookiee who came out intrigued me, so I'm bought in.
Oh, that Wookiee was sick.
Yeah,
that Wookiee was so cool.
Yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at with it. Like, this is a character who hasn't really been given a lot to do. He's just kind of been built off of just media hype for the last 30 years. Like, I used to draw Boba Fett stuff in middle school because he was just so badass. So, like, I get being a part of that little hype train, but I'm just kind of like appreciating the story for what it is. Going with minimal expectations, as long as they don't. The bigger thing I was upset about, And I think why I like the flashbacks is that if he has a change of character to where it's not just being cruel, I'm glad that these flashbacks are at least giving me some reason to where if he does soften up as a character, there's motivation behind it, rather than just like, if put it like this, if they didn't have these flashbacks, I'd be more upset because I'm like, yo, dude, you were a bounty hunter who Vader said literally don't disintegrate people. Why are you out here trying to rule respect? You clearly don't, you clearly about this life. The Tusken stuff at least makes me buy that potential character shift. And again, it being like just a sudden, just like what, almost like a Last of the Mohicans type deal, which I just did not expect at all. It's just, I'm just entertained by it, so I'm just here for it.
It feels like it's like really tasty Swiss cheese that's like 95% holes, So there's like not a lot of actual cheese there, but when you do get the cheese, it's tasty, but most of it is just kind of the holes.
I mean,
I love Swiss cheese. That's a good analogy, Mike.
I mean, I'm entertained watching it. That's all I can really say is like, all the stuff
I want to be, but it's just like the connection for me to all this stuff and my motivation of enjoying it and watching it is who these characters are. And like Boba is such a classic character that people have been dying to get some elaboration on. And it just seems like this is not what anybody wanted her. But again, you're right. Expectations.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like it's moving him. We're very much getting to see where the next part is for Boba Fett. But everybody's questions are like, what happened before that, right? Like everyone wants to know how did Boba Fett come to be?
Who was Boba Fett? Like,
but Lucasfilms, Kathleen Kennedy, all these folks are probably thinking like, we already did that. We're doing Obi-Wan. We're doing Solo. We did
so that's why
Rogue One,
this
right?
is
and so now they're like, let's actually move this thing forward. And I kind of appreciate that.
I think the Tusken Raider stuff is almost going to be completely irrelevant to what the show's actual purpose is going to be in the larger context of the new Star Wars shows and the web they're trying to weave. And I think they just wanted to maybe tell this story, and maybe it was more focused on the Tusken Raiders, and they wanted a few episodes on that, which could have been its own show, arguably, with any random guy that they saved, and then it'll connect to something at the end. Mm-hmm. That is what I think what will happen. But you're right. I mean, we have enough stuff, so it's maybe, and then Star Wars and superhero bloat, you also need to be willing to look at things in their own right, and then not everything has to be a puzzle piece.
Mm-hmm. And I'm going to push back a little bit also, Mike, in that we've talked before about how we want new stories. We want new things we haven't seen. We're tired of the Force and Jedi and the Skywalkers. This is doing all of that. We're exploring concepts that we've never seen get explored in Star Wars. We're seeing that the whole Tusken Raider, native indigenous peoples analogy was something that they've never really jumped on before. Totally new territory. It's not just a dude accompanying a child. Like a bunch of the complaints we've had about previous Star Wars media, the Boba Fett show, even if I was kind of not hyped about it, it does a lot of that. Yeah, the character, we might know the character by face recognition and by name recognition, but you're right, he hasn't been fleshed out. But that's a good thing. You have a blank slate to work from. It means you can really get creative and not be beholden to, we have to make him this way, and you're kind of hamstrung by the source material. He's a bounty hunter. He was thrown in the pit. Bam, you can do whatever you want from there, which is what they're doing. So I think part of that is, we need to let's be grateful that it's not just more Skywalker Force chosen baby nonsense that we have consistently complained about and been upset about.
You're not wrong.
Let me see Boba, the Cap execute a couple people, and suddenly this could be one of my favorite shows in terms of doing that blend of brutality and
he's not gonna.
I have faith in Jon Favreau, and I think this is gonna. I think it'll turn itself around.
He already could have executed people. He already could have He's not going to execute anybody.
Like, and if also, they build up to it, cool. Like they might have him do it reluctantly, but give me something.
All right.
Also, last thing, Tamora Morrison, love him. Like, obviously, he's been such a core part of Star Wars. He's just not a very good actor.
Oh, shots fired.
I mean, he's just not. I'm sorry, he's just not. Like, he's a cool character, but just like he shouldn't have a whole show built around him.
When do you notice this? I don't really notice him being a bad actor. I don't think he's great, but I don't notice him being
just any of his dialogue without the helmet on. It just pulls me out immediately. It's kind of decent in like the kind of nonverbal parts of dealing with the Tusken Raiders. But when he was visiting the mayor, I'm just not really feeling intimidated, which I think he's supposed to be intimidating, or like troubled as like him in his old age. It's just kind of missing the mark for me.
All right.
Okay.
Sounds good. Let's finish it up with what we're loving. Usually we start the episode with what we're loving, but we're going to finish with what we're loving. It was just the holidays, so you guys might have had some time off. You might have had a chance to, get new stuff, new content. So I want to know where you guys are at. Savon, what have you been up to? What are you loving?
Oh, y'all about to be mad at this one, but we're going full send, baby. So right before I went on my holiday break, I went back to New Orleans for the holidays. So I was back home hanging out with my brother, back at the house with the family. And so my brother and I naturally have always played ridiculous amounts of Grand Theft Auto online together, going on almost 10 years, maybe him and I, like 5 years, whatever.
It's crazy.
And so they still put out new updates. And so an update that came out right before, I think like the day before I went on my holiday, was an update called The Contract. And, if you haven't played the story, it takes place like in modern times now. The character Franklin from the story returns, and you collaborate with him to basically do a job for Dr. Dre. And it involves helping recover his leaked phone. So a lot of fun DLC. It's clearly a reason just to plug Dr. Dre into the game and their artist. Rockstar has a music label. All that's fine and dandy. But the reason I'm putting this on here is, one, gameplay-wise, I've had a blast. But when a lot of video games do music-based updates, you're going to alienate a lot of people because music is just wide-ranging and some genres just people don't mess with. This is a genre update I completely rock with. I grew up listening to just gangster rap and funk and all of this. My dad listened to Tupac growing up. We used to listen to lots of Eminem, Dr. Dre, NWA, all that stuff. Then the update adds a ridiculous amount of music.
Am I your dad's age? How old is your dad?
How old is my dad? No, my dad's older. My dad's like, 50?
What? Do the math, Wesley.
Oh my goodness.
That's like 56.
His dad would have been 10 years old having a child.
No, but I mean, he could have been like 3 years ahead of me or 4 years ahead of me.
13 years old having a child.
Well, I didn't do the math. I don't know how old Savon is. I don't remember. I just know he's young.
My dad is 55.
Me and your dad have similar taste in music, so that's all. I was just saying.
So I'm saying. So all that to say, I grew up to all that. The George Clinton, the funk. That's like some of my music I listen to.
That's beyond my time. Yeah.
So the update adds just a bunch of that. So a bunch of like music that artists that Dre worked with. So you have Mary J. Blige being added. You have Funkadelic being added. You have Tupac being added. 50 Cent being added. All this is just this is just an update where almost all of the music added I either grew up to or listened to. And there's a bunch of new exclusive Dr. Dre tracks on the game that have like Anderson .Paak features and
Are they good?
Features. They're amazing. Like, there was a mission where you have to go into a party because the thing's leaked and a guy's trying to sell the album as an NFT and you have to crash the thing.
Oh, my God.
But while you're at this function, the game is just playing his leaked music because it's like, oh, it's leaked, cut it off. I was in the mission was like not cutting it off. I was like, oh, this is a banger. And I'm just in the mission not completing the objective because the song slaps.
Savon is literally the target audience for
I've never felt more like this. You save Dr. Dre at the studio, and there's literally just a cutscene after where Anderson .Paak, DJ Pooh, you know who DJ Pooh is, Wesley? DJ Pooh, who, again, big hip-hop figure.
Oh, this is a podcast. I shook my head no.
Sorry. But anyone who knows DJ Pooh, but also for my people who watch Friday, Red from Friday, the dude who got his chain took, he's also DJ Pooh. He's in it. There's a whole cutscene with him, Anderson .Paak, actually doing songs in the studio. And if you're not into it, it probably felt like the biggest waste of time. But as someone who just loves and knows pretty much every new music they've added, I have fun just driving around listening to just the West Coast classics now. I've found old Tupac songs I didn't realize I loved, rediscovered some Dr. Dre I didn't know existed, and purely just from the musical taste, I've just loved this update, and I've been listening to way more West Coast gangster rap on my Spotify. Like Tupac's You Can't See Me is 100% going to be on my Spotify Wrapped at the end of 2020.
Just on repeat.
Facts.
Can I tell like a funny 30-second story
online.
about friend of the show and substitute Will Katz?
Yeah.
So this is really quick. So we were random freshman year roommates.
It's not going to involve him trying to say the N-word and you having to correct him, right? Like during a rap music song.
No.
Okay.
In many ways, Katz is the last person in the world who would ever do that.
I'll be the first.
So we were random freshman year roommates. It was serendipitous because he's one of my best friends to this day. So we were walking to the dining hall on like the first day we met each other, and we're both white Jewish men. And I was like, oh, like, I think he was like, oh, what kind of music do you like? And I was like, oh, like Blink-182, like Taking Back Sunday stuff. I was like, what kind of music do you like? And he goes, oh, mostly hardcore gangster rap. I was like, okay, well, okay.
Agree to disagree.
No, I mean, and then it was funny because we kind of got each other into our music. He was listening to prog metal by the end of the year, and I was, singing gangster rap. So there it is.
I just always wonder, people, like, I grew up to all that, so I don't have another frame of reference. Like, I was a kid listening to Tupac and Biggie, but I couldn't imagine just never having listened to that. And then you just,
I mean, I did. Like, I knew some of the core songs, but, like, there was one we listened to a lot. Like, the hook was like, if you're a scared MFer, go to church.
Oh, Ice Cube, go to church.
Yeah.
Oh,
we listened to that one a lot.
If you a gutter, mother, do your dirt. Oh, yeah.
But then he also did introduce me to some of the classics. So, like, I got really into 2001, my freshman year, which was funny because I listened to the Marshall Mathers LP, which is, obviously tangential to that album, just in terms of production and all the features and songs. I listened to that like when I was like 6 years old incessantly. So it was funny. I didn't really kind of know the rest of what Jerry was doing at that time. Anyway, yeah. Is it my turn to talk about my nerdy stuff rather than gangster rap?
All right. What were you loving, Mike?
I'm going to talk about something I started and something I finished. So I finally finished the Dune novel.
Oh, nice job.
Loved it. So it's really long. The movie barely touches kind of the scale of the book and where the book goes. So I'm really interested and kind of nervous to see what they do because now I'm someone who's read Dune. I'm kind of better than all of you guys.
Superior.
Yeah. I really liked it. Once I'd gotten up to the point in the book where the movie ends, I watched the movie again and liked the movie a lot more because I knew what was actually happening and what all the random nouns were in the larger story at hand. The book is really cool. Like, it just builds on everything I've said I liked about the movie a lot. The world building is fantastic. The story gets really good. The scale just goes to a crazy level. Really good book. If you're into sci-fi, highly recommend reading it. Take your time with it. It's very dense, but loved it. So finished Dune, so loved that. And what I started, and we've talked about on the show a little bit, so I'm not going to talk about it too much, but why I think everybody should play it is the Guardians of the Galaxy game. I was incredibly skeptical, literally exclusively because of that Avengers nonsense game that came out. Like, obviously the Spider-Man game was incredible, but we saw, like, multiple superheroes. It just didn't work with that game. It works really well with this game, and it's very comparable to almost Jedi Fallen Order, right? So Jedi Fallen Order took things from a bunch of different games, like Metroidvania, like world design, Dark Souls-ish combat, dying on and off, and then put it under a Star Wars umbrella and told a cool story and gave it that Star Wars flavor. And it was a cool game. It was really good. If you took out the Star Wars part of it, it probably wouldn't have been as good, but they did a good job with the Star Wars. This game is very similar. It has the linear action-adventure storytelling of Uncharted. It has decision-making and squad-based combat. So you have your squad of the other Guardians who you don't control. You only control Star-Lord. So you get to level up the other Guardians and command them in battle to do different abilities or solve puzzles, things like that. So that combined with the decision-making and that those have consequences and dialogue and the things you say have consequences of Mass Effect, which it did that well. All under kind of the Guardians umbrella, but I think it's almost can arguably be better than the Guardians movies. The characters are so good. Savon, I think in particular, you would like it more than the movies. I think it just does kind of hits in that interstellar politics, like the stories of all that. It does that, and I think in a bit more of an interesting way of the movies. The characters are now pretty analogous to the movie, but they stand in their own right. They're really interesting. This game, it has no right to be as good as it is, to be honest. Like, it has the same music, and it kind of takes the quirky 80s vibe and pushes it to another level. I'm shocked. I'm honestly surprised how good this game it is. It sucks the Avengers has kind of taken steam out of Super. It was so bad, like it almost neglected all the momentum that we had from those amazing Spider-Man games. Like, that's just how bad the Avengers were. So yeah, I'm shocked. everybody should. It's super linear, right? It's a single player linear action game.
You cannot get off the
You can't get off the
4-foot
path.
pathway.
I'm honestly refreshed to finally not have an open world game and a game that knows what it wants to do. It's telling its story. It's on that path.
It's a roller coaster.
Yeah, no, it is. It's literally like
It's a
the structure is like Uncharted. And if everyone get this game on sale, don't pay $60 for it. But if you can get it $20, highly recommend playing it. It's just fun. It's just like it's like the best of what Marvel is, the movies, and they put it in a game, and the game itself is really engaging.
Dope. I already talked about
games.
it. Mike,
I know,
redoing
I know, but we can
your
cut
analysis
that if
was
you
better,
want.
I
But
guess.
yeah, well, then we can
It
go
wasn't.
back and cut yours in retrospect.
You just retcon mine out. Okay. What I'm loving, I have to finish it out. I usually, so since I get to host, I get to decide who goes. I never put myself last because I don't want to have that pressure of like
Because
ending
you talk
the show
about
strong.
boring stuff like
Yeah.
plumbing and biking and fatherhood.
It happens, but I
Back
have an actual thing
peanuts.
this time. But before I forget, I wanted to mention this last show. My sister for Christmas had me and my family. Actually, she made us sweatshirts. I'm holding it up for the guys to see. On the front, it has embroidered. It says Wesley, regular dude. From the opening to our show. It's got a nice little controller in our podcast.
Yeah,
colors.
it looks really good.
Yeah. And
Looks
then on the
warm.
back, she
Oh.
had our logo screened on to the back. It's all huge.
When do we get those?
Hey, you gotta talk to my sister. She's the
I
merch
know.
maven out there. So, ladies and gents, if you want to be rocking the confidently wrong sweater, it comes in gray right now. Logo on the back, name on the front. Should be good. You could be friend of the show. Everybody else's monogram said friend of the show. So
me and as
shout out
you
to
know,
Alexis.
as the young hip ones kind of in this circle, me and Alexis are Instagram homies. So she actually messaged me when she made those. I was like, "Look, I'm so excited!" And she was like, "I'm sorry, I just need to show this." I was like, "No, it's fucking awesome!" Like,
I'm young. Yep.
She said
yeah,
that she was asking you for the
okay,
picture
Savon.
though, and you didn't have it at all. So she had to ask me.
yeah,
Should have
Which,
sent that
you
to
know,
you. ahead of time.
I know. Well,
That's all right.
I like I said, I'm not functional. I'm just the heart and soul.
All right, but my real what I'm loving. I mean, I obviously love the sweatshirt. It's amazing. I've been wearing it. Was I finally actually read a book, and not only did I read two books, or not only did I read one book, but in true binge mode, Wesley mode, I read two books, and I read both of them in a binge style. So let's back up. About a year and a half ago, I got a huge book. It's part of this series called the Stormlight series, and it's just been a slog for me to get through. I think I've made it through maybe 200 pages in the past year and a half, and that's pretty slow. I think the other books I finished in that series, I usually took about a week. And it hasn't been super interesting. I haven't had a ton of time. I've been playing way more video games, been on the podcast, all that good stuff. So I actually haven't read a book in a really long time. Jen got me two books from the same author, Andy Weir. He's the author who wrote The Martian, which was it Matt Damon? Damon's
Matt
movie.
Damon.
Good movie.
And so his subsequent books were called Artemis and Project Hail Mary. Let me tell you guys, I loved them both. His style is very similar in both of them. It's very like smart person is able to like problem solve these things using engineering and some science, and then is able to figure their way through these adventures that they're having in different places. One is on the moon, one is in space. So I'm in my head, I'm like, well, these books will be great. I'll just take them. I can read them on the break. It turns out that I took the book with me. I started reading it on the plane, and the very first day that I was in California, I finished the book. So that book is done. I took it all the way to California. It was the only book I took, thinking it would take me the whole break to read it, and I now have no more book to read. So
Classic Wesley.
it was done. I think it probably a 6-hour read, something like that, 7-hour read, done first day.
You remember it? You're a teacher, because
wait.
you're a teacher, so reading and comprehending, that's not the same thing.
Not the same thing.
So I need
Well,
to make
I
sure.
comprehend
While
it
you
just fine.
comprehend
I don't remember it at all. I comprehend it just fine. So
in
actually,
the
wait.
moment.
That might be worse.
So this is terrible. I actually have read that book before and didn't know.
Oh my god. Are
I
you
had-
serious?
I had
Serious,
maybe
dude?
read it a year or two or something like that beforehand. So
we gotta get you on like some meditation app or something. Dude.
Yeah,
like
you
you
gotta
gotta,
get
you
some
gotta,
vitamins.
yeah, you gotta be like a little more kind of connected here. You
on
can't
page
just,
like 50, I'm like, this is all sounding familiar. And then by like page 70, I'm like, I've definitely read this book before. But
I understand with a movie.
I don't know
a
what happens
book,
next.
Wesley.
I don't know. And
I
I
wish
didn't
we
remember
had,
what happened next, so I just kept
I don't
reading.
trust you to answer this honestly. I wish we had Brian in here to like. Did you have like some kind of crazy head injury in college or something? Like,
No.
It's not normal to not be like. I have a terrible memory. Like, I have a terrible.
Apparently not as
memory.
bad as mine.
But like, I just have never met someone who almost like, as a rule, does not commit things from short term to long term memory. How
It's
do
weird.
you read a book twice? Bro, come on. And it's not like you read a lot either.
No. Yeah.
This is probably
Like
the
50
last
first
book
dates.
you read.
But it's in my memory, right? Because
No,
I
it's
recognize-
not.
No,
It's clearly not.
Clearly not there, homie. No.
Well, like I remembered reading it though. Like when things would happen in the book, I'd be like, "Oh yeah, that's familiar. I recognize that." But yeah, like reading it. I mean, it's almost like reading it for the first time. I literally like could not remember what happened in the
But
next
you
page.
enjoy it. All right. Well, maybe
So,
then we're
I got-
tripping, Savon, because you got to enjoy the same book twice.
B. I just can't bring myself to think that this is acceptable behavior. Like, Wes, you cannot just be a series of disconnected events. This just makes
Well,
up.
I'm not,
Wesley
though, 'cause I don't
Nakamura.
remember the
Alan is-
events.
Not Alan. Fuck, I don't know why I just said Alan. Wesley is like the Christopher Nolan movie Memento, where it's just like you're remembering all these things as they're happening. It's like, do you just live in this air of mystery and
Yeah.
intrigue all the time?
Your
Absolutely.
brain just a jigsaw puzzle.
Okay, but here's the thing,
I
buddy.
don't
You're
remember anything.
you're someone's father now, so
Yeah.
we're gonna need you to kind of
and spouse.
well, he's been a spouse. The Lord knows we'll have to
I
talk
don't
to
remember
Jen to
anything.
see
I
what
have
it's.
to write everything down. If I like need to remember it, it has to be written down.
You are a father, a husband, and an educator, and you literally probably can't remember what you had for breakfast.
I didn't have breakfast yet. I had a banana.
But you were thinking about it though. I watched you think about it
you
now.
were like, "Hey,
You
did
thought
I have
about did I have
breakfast?"
breakfast? I watched you process it.
Yeah, my brain doesn't remember things. I don't know. I just store things I think are important, and none of that seems important. So I just
Wes,
don't
you
store
too
it.
What is
smart to just not
important? Like,
remember shit.
yeah, Wesley won't
You're not a
remember.
dumb
Like,
dude.
yeah,
Like-
Wesley's gonna like forget his child's birthday, but like will remember like one round of Apex he got screwed on.
Yeah, right.
But that
Wes,
makes sense.
Wes, you're not a dumb dude, so I just
No, you're a very smart guy.
So
It's
this
like-
is really upsetting me.
It
That's-
really
memory is
is
different than being smart. I don't know. My
I
memory
know,
doesn't
but-
work.
I know, but most people that are semi-intelligent can have the ability to like remember basic things. Like
Yeah.
if I read this book before,
Yeah, no, I don't
It's
know.
but like below
Apparently not.
average though, homie.
It's very below average. I
I'm-
don't know
I-
what's going
we
on.
gotta find you like some resources or
I
something.
know we got to get you like on. I don't know the stuff they give to like old people with like degenerative brain things. You know, they can't remember stuff. Like, are you doing crosswords every day, Wesley? Are you doing your puzzles?
I need to
I'll
do
pay-
Sudoku. Yeah.
Are you
I'll pay
eating
for the
your-
New York Times for you. I'll pay for
Yeah,
the
for
crosswords for
real.
you. That's my gift to you, player. Keep that brain working.
Well, so to finish it off, Jen got me both books, Artemis and Project Hail Mary, which it's not a sequel. They're just by the same author. And I started it on Friday and finished it yesterday. So,
Jesus Christ.
good times. It was all done.
I'm
Great
glad
book.
you
Loved
enjoyed it. Like,
Yeah.
I'm happy you're reading and enjoyed it, but like, Jesus, Wes. Can you? I'm not going to ask you to do this right now. Do you feel like you could summarize the book with any level of depth?
No. Well, yeah. I mean, yeah.
Dude, what did you do with your time?
Yeah, for sure. I could summarize it, but in probably a month I couldn't. I could do it now, but like, yeah, give me a month. No, it'll
So
be
when
like
you're
way
enjoying things,
down.
you're just truly in a state of flow. You're not like
Yeah.
absent. You're not present. You're just genuinely in that. Maybe
No, I'm
we're missing
present.
out.
like
I'm
he's
present
kicking
and
a
I'm
You're
in a
box.
state
just
of
so
flow.
present. You're just
Yeah.
so present that you're not even going to remember it after.
Yeah,
You
for
like
sure.
go into a black hole.
Yes.
Essentially.
for sure.
Are
I
you a
don't know. My
Buddhist
brain
monk?
is dumb.
It's not dumb. It's just something
It also
about the
makes
memory
doing-
part. Your
to be honest-
hippocampus.
Doing this show is sometimes hard for me because we'll be talking about things that I don't remember. I have to like
Yeah,
go
I
look
I
things up.
imagine a show that's all about like recalling like media and
no.
then giving it a
It's called- it's
semi-thorough
called
level
life.
of analysis.
That's why a
this
lot of
is
things get
hilarious.
written down in the show notes. bros.
Jesus, yeah, it's turned into what we're loving to what we're hating about Wesley.
No, it's not that. It's just Wesley, just an interesting case study because
I'm
Oh,
sure
maybe
someone
it's- I
could
have-
study
I have
my
good
brain
memory.
and be like, "What is wrong with it?" It's very.
It's like
I don't-
they forgot to like like in like little toys. There's like the little
Yeah.
The piece of paper you pull out to like activate it.
The battery, yeah.
They forgot to do that in like your hippocampus. So it's just not actually forming memories.
So
Really
like,
not.
do you forget? Like, do you not remember? Like, I remember middle school. I remember elementary school. I remember college.
I remember like certain things, but I don't remember like much of it.
No, like I have a bad memory, Savon. I don't know if we've ever encountered that in our friendship, but like I have a very bad memory. Like I don't like Anna will tell me stuff like, oh, we're doing something this on this date, and I'll completely forget, or I'll ask her what we're having for dinner 5 times. But like if I watch a movie, like I remember I watched the movie. I can
remember
explain
when
it
I
to
try.
you. Yeah, you know, I can sit here, but I mean, like, Jesus, Wesley. If I'm complaining about it, then like there's an issue here.
I wonder if the enjoyment part of my brain or the active part of my brain that's involved in like functioning is like preventing the memory part of my brain from working.
You know what? Maybe it is like you're so focused on watching it and then sending text messages to us about it that your brain can only do those 2 things. It can't watch, analyze, and then text us and make memories. So
Put them in a
if
sensory.
If you cut out the text messages, yeah, I mean that's another good thing about Wes is like he just needs to go in the confidently wrong like text chain and he's gonna have all his memories about everything he's ever consumed ever.
So really, this is just like maybe you should just write it in a diary, homie.
He has a diary. It's literally our group text.
Well, and if that helps, then I guess it's better than nothing.
All right, well, this just turned into a roast of Wesley for like
Thanks
15
a lot.
minutes.
It's a case study. It's not I'm not trying to hate on my son. I just really want to understand.
I don't know. I feel like brains are weird, man. I don't know. I feel like if
They
you guys
are.
were in my brain, you'd be like, "This is frustrating. What are you doing? What? How do you
Like,
function?"
nope,
I
I've seen enough.
cannot imagine being married to you. We're gonna have to get Jen on the show one day.
Yeah, but like,
Friend of the show.
so yeah. I mean, to be reliable, like at Carver and stuff, and to be reliable as a teacher, I have to write everything down that I want
I
to
have
do.
to write stuff
Otherwise,
down
like,
professionally as
it
well.
just doesn't
but
happen.
that's work. I'm not talking about things I enjoy that I'm happy doing.
Yeah, I need money to motivate me into caring about other stuff.
If
but
anyone is listening, I do like my job. I do enjoy it.
same. I like my job too.
But, you know, it's different than, you know, playing a game
Yeah,
or watching a movie or reading a book.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's wrap up there.
Love you, Wes.
I don't remember our social media. No, I'm just kidding. I do. At confidently_pod, Twitter, Instagram. Find us there. Tell us what you thought about Boba Fett, what you thought about Hawkeye. Were they both mid shows? And are you excited? Because Mike gave me a weird look. Are you excited for Peacekeeper coming up? Are you excited for Eternals to come out and so you can actually watch it? I wish COVID was over because I would really actually like to go see Spider-Man again. I thought it was just a fun, enjoyable ride, and I don't remember what happened, so I do need to go see it again at some point. But yeah, good times. Have a great one, guys.
Tell
Bye.
your friends.
Bye.